devastating news for LSU football yesterday. I think that from a timeline standpoint, this is good. This gives you an opportunity to at least be able to begin to find a replacement at a crucial spot on the offensive line. Now, Max Johnson, in the opinion of the Jordy Culotta Show, is going to be the starting quarterback at LSU here in this 2021 football season. So when you talk about protecting a quarterback's blind side, when you talk about being able to protect the backside of the quarterback, it is not the left tackle on this offensive line that is going to be highlighted, right? It's going to be the right tackle, Austin Deculus, which is concerning in itself. But Dare Rosenthal was a guy who was coming back off of a season last year where he was really getting his breakthrough opportunity after paying his dues in the program, being a heralded recruit out of Faraday, Louisiana, and finally getting a chance after a couple of position changes to get to the offensive line, focus on a position that really has a lot of high-end talent and potential, a lot of high-end payment in the NFL if he was able to master that position in the SEC. That is what we've been told about Dare Rosenthal for now going on the better part of a year, and the experiment has just been a failure. And it hasn't been a failure, in my opinion, due to LSU's effort in trying to continue to keep him eligible. And at some point, the player, the student athlete, and I am pro student athlete, let the record show, for the majority of the cases and debates that you will find in administration, NCAA, corporation versus student athlete, I'm going to side with the student athlete 99% of the time. Drug policy, academics, off the field issues, anything that comes up during a playing career for a player at the professional level, student athlete at the college level, I'll usually find the side of the player. In this instance, I think Dare Rosenthal was given every opportunity to get this right. And there are rumors swirling and there's hearsay out there that this is another weed test. And I think LSU's weed policy is overly ridiculous. And it is tough to really explain, and they get recruited against it, quite frankly. Devonta Smith, Dylan Moses, Tim Williams, too many guys have come back from Alabama and told the drug policy in Tuscaloosa and what it is compared to LSU is laughable. I mean, it's hysterical. But the policy is the policy. And this is the same policy that got Tyrann Mathieu thrown out of school in 2012.
It's crazy.
So this isn't something new. And this isn't something that should surprise anybody, because LSU has done this continuously. LSU's compliance department is better than any dynasty in sports I've ever seen.
It's undefeated, dude.
They are better than any emperor that has ever come through any type of dictatorship. I mean, they are undefeated. They are number one preseason, in-season, postseason every single year, and it ain't even close. So anybody trying to bark up that tree and bitch about LSU compliance this morning, I hear you, but we got to move on and go somewhere else with it, because we've been having this argument now for almost a decade. But I still haven't forgiven that department for throwing Tyrann Mathieu out of school. I never will. But it happened. And now it looks like Rosenthal is fallen victim to the same fate. But Rosenthal has been given more opportunities than Mathieu was. And Mathieu was given a lot. I know that. I will say that for the record. But he wasn't given enough. Rosenthal was given enough, and continuously he let the program down. And at some point, the policy is the policy, and you have to adhere to the rules and regulations that are in place, and he's in the transfer portal.
Your left tackle.
So where do you think he'll go?
A lot of rumors are swirling right now that he'll end up at Kentucky. I don't know. It sounds like he'll stay in the league. But
that's what Kelvin Joseph did, boss man fat. I mean, it's the same kind of situation it seemed like whenever he was at LSU. Then he goes to Kentucky. He's a 2-year starter and a top 3-round pick.
Yeah.
Rosenthal potentially could be that.
I agree.
I mean, they have told you on the potential of Rosenthal now for 3 years. I mean, when you look at him, he passes the eyeball test. When you hear about his strength and his athleticism, he has all the skills that you need to play. He can't keep himself on the field because he can't take care of his business off the field. And that's been the issue with him. And from my standpoint, look, I'm pulling for him. I hope that he can catch on his feet, and I hope he can be successful, and I hope he can make whatever it is that he wants to do out of football come true in his life, because I think he can. But it's not going to happen at LSU, and that's a shame, because he's a Louisiana kid. He was a guy that was highly recruited. LSU's done a lot of work to keep him on the roster for a long time, and here he is going into a season where he's got another great opportunity right here in his fingertips, and he lets it slip away because he didn't handle his stuff off the field. And for LSU, you'd rather wipe your hands of this in June than October or September going into the season, where you've got to scramble and find a guy. Now, if you've listened to this show, you know how I feel about the offensive line. To me, it is the one reservation I have in saying that LSU right now is championship contenders, real championship contenders. They got a great roster. They got skill everywhere. They got playmakers. They got tacklers. They got guys that will play on Sundays for a long time on this roster. I don't know how deep and how good the offensive line is. And if you take away their left tackle in June and tell me I got to find another guy going into the season, my concern level just went from, red level emergency to dire, because there's no proven depth. Now, they have names. They have guys that are on the roster. And by the way, welcome to your job, Brad Davis.
Right?
Yeah.
Welcome aboard.
And we talk compliance here, and isn't that part of the reason I felt like Scott Woodward was brought in, to kind of help the compliance department not be the way it is right now? Because I feel like this is common knowledge. When Nick Saban came in, he looked at that compliance part and said, that is not the way we're doing it here when I'm the coach.
Here's the deal. When you're under investigation, you can't start moving people. If you start firing people and moving people in compliance, red flags start waving all over the place. Alarms and sirens start going on everywhere. And while Woodward's got a great relationship with Indianapolis and the NCAA, you can't just blatantly break the rules in their face and expect things not to happen, right? This compliance adjustment that Scott Woodward is going through and has started is going to take a minute. It's going to take a while. And it's going to take even more of time because they're under investigation. And they've had the NCAA and the FBI hot on their ass since Woodward took the job, before he took the job. So from that department, he's really been handcuffed on getting it overhauled, right? I mean, just totally, really, you got to blow the whole thing up and reconstruct it. I mean, I've seen where Bo Bonson is moving on at a date coming up. I mean, that, is a piece of turnover that
you wanted to happen for a long time.
Long time. But there is names within that structure that are very good at their job. Stop being
so good at it.
The LSU compliance department would argue that they're the best at their job. Now, the LSU athletic programs would say, are we working together or against each other? I mean, I've heard head coaches within that facility say, the toughest opponent I got on my schedule is LSU compliance. I feel like I can beat everybody but compliance. And that's true. I mean, there's so many examples along the way that you can look back and point to.
Has this not happened to another player between Matthew and Rosenthal? Is this the first one since?
No, it happens all of the time.
Oh, no, it's happened. It's happened before. I mean,
if you want to look into it, you'll find people that probably should have stayed on LSU that are no longer at LSU, and that's a good. It's just one of the things in college football that happens in college athletics. But they have to be the most hated people in the building. Like, how can you have to be a special type of person to work for compliance and be walking the hallways and shaking hands and glad handing these people that you're actively almost working against.
Yeah.
It's a hell of a working dynamic.
Yeah.
It's a hell of a working relationship. It's one that is very difficult to understand in the way that it operates and functions every day. Because
it's like you're a mole in the building and everybody knows it and they don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in a lot of schools, this is one of the first orders of business that Nick Saban takes care of. For better or for worse, the two enemies of the state, or as it is publicly perceived from LSU compliance, is Bo Bonson and Miriam Seeger. Right? Those are the two names that you continuously hear when LSU runs into problems. There's a story of Bo Bonson counting coaches at the opening football game. He was down on the sidelines counting the coaches that were wearing the headsets, and LSU had one guy extra wearing a headset and turned him in. Man. Stuff that's very, very minimal.
I would like to meet him.
But Bo Bonson and Miriam Seeger, for the 4 years that Nick Saban was here, he reassigned both of them to the ticket office. You know what I mean? Straight reassigned them. Walked into hey, look, I need to get this guy in on this date, and we need to make sure that we have this, and this done. And they both said, no, I don't think that we can do that. And he said, no, I think that we are going to do that. And if you ever tell me no again, you're going to be slinging tickets.
Have you met the dungeon
yet? I'm going to go ahead and move you to the janitor's
And I think Bonson didn't buy it yet. He came through with another recommendation and from Saban, and Bonson was like, nah, tell him no. And Saban was like, tell Bonson to start learning the ticket plans.
Yeah. Prep rate it just the way I like.
When's the last time you cold called, Bo?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Run through this Rolodex for us here. See if we got any ticket buyers. It really is. It really is. It that's how it operates.
That's
you
what
know
I'm saying.
what I mean?
If you're Scott Woodward, would you not ask for one concession?
You
look,
do,
understand we're going through
I'm
this.
telling you, Lloyd, this thing is not that easy, because that was my stance on it.
Nick Saban seemed to make it very easy.
When it was, but he's not under investigation, and the federal government's not crawling up his ass. You know what I mean? And the NCAA's not swimming around 3 of his 4 major programs. You know what I mean? But
isn't that compliance's fault also?
You start moving people, they would tell you that they're the ones that are alerting them. Yeah, that's the dynamic that I think Woodward has got to figure out, or at least he's got to, put in place. And to get there is, it is a political obstacle course that even Scott Woodward finds very demanding. You know what I mean? Scott Woodward, the reason why he's great at his job is because he's a politician.
Right.
You know what I mean? He doesn't piss a lot of people off, and for the most part, he can kind of get done what he wants to get done. We saw
Jay Johnson,
Kim Mulkey.
Yes.
The ability to open up the checkbook in a time that the athletic department perceived as not making the money that it once was because of COVID and restrictions, and that's why he wasn't. A lot of people for his first year, and where's Scott Woodward? What does he even do? What's going on? Well, he couldn't. He was handcuffed in the sense he couldn't financially get out there and make any moves, and this compliance stuff is a political obstacle course that is held to manage, to navigate, because there's not only the LSU circumstances that you're dealing with, which is a lot of people being in a job for a long time in a position that you got to go in there and kill a lot of the sacred cows, but you've also got to deal with the NCAA and the federal government flying around your department. So and like I said, when that is happening, you can't go in there and start axing people. You can't start hacksawing people when Mark Emmert and NCAA's swimming back around. All right, Hunt Palmer is in the UDL. We will get back to this topic, but very that's a big hit for LSU's offensive line. You got to now develop another left tackle. Cam Wire, in my opinion, would be the first one up. Garrett Dellinger is a guy that they signed in this last class who's a rookie, which you would hate to say, hey, man, go out there and start playing meaningful snaps, but they may be in that position. We'll talk about some other names. Marcus Dumerville, you would think it would be time for him. Xavier Hill's another guy that we always hear of, a utility guy that you can use in a couple of spots. So, Rosenthal, LSU's offensive, if there was one position group where you could not stand to lose one player, it was offensive line, and then you lose your left tackle. That is That's
so LSU.
That is a hell of a hit.
LSU.
That is a hell of a hit.